As a way of centering us for our time together, I want to share with you Psalms 1, and I'll be using the Common English Bible translation. The truly happy person doesn't follow wicked advice, doesn't stand on the road of sinners, and doesn't sit with the disrespectful. Instead of doing those things, these persons love the Lord's instruction, and they recite God's instruction day and night. They are like a tree replanted by a stream of water, which bears fruit at just the right time, and whose leaves don't fade. Whatever they do succeeds. They're not true for the wicked. They are not like dust that the wind blows away. And that's why the wicked will have no standing in the court of justice, neither will sinners in the assembly of the righteous. The Lord is intimately acquainted with the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked is destroyed. Amen. Welcome to Hobson UMC on YouTube. I am VHD Jr. I'm the lead pastor here at Hobson, and I'm in for my weekly conversation with my son Trey, where it gives us an opportunity to check in with one another and to discuss the upcoming lectionary passage that I have been working with for the coming Sunday, and to hopefully in the conversation kind of work some things out, kind of help me get my direction for where I might want to go, and to have Trey help me kind of put that in context for things that are going on within in his life, my life, and the life of the congregation, so that the message might be on point. It's also just an opportunity just to touch in and to be able to connect with you. We deeply appreciate when you let us know that there was something that you heard that brought you some comfort at a moment where you might need a comfort, or something that challenged you to look at the scripture a different way. And sometimes it's just an opportunity to for you to find out that we may have some friends in common, which is something that happened to me today. A person said, "I didn't know you knew such and such person." I said, "Oh, yeah, I know them." But anyway, so it's an opportunity for us just to be able to check in. And so truly appreciate your support, and want to particularly give a shout out to those who not only listen, but those whom financially support the ministry here at Hobson. We deeply appreciate your gifts and your time. We do not take it lightly. There are many opportunities that you have out there to be to check in and to see what people are thinking about, and for you to spend some time with us. We do not take that lightly, and so I truly want to give you thanks for that. Always an important time whenever we gather here at Hobson, whether it is for worship or during worship, in small groups, or whenever it is sharing with one another those things that are upon our hearts, that we call our joys and our concerns, of things of which we give God thanks for, where we are truly seeing God working in our lives, and for those situations, and that we see, that we know that we need God and the community. That's why we share it with one another, because we know that it's better for us when we have someone that's traveling with us, and we believe that when we offer it up in prayer, not only are we just lifting it up and sharing it with God, but we're also saying that we want to be used by God to answer those prayers that we offer up. A part of our celebration is that we, as a congregation, like to celebrate birthdays. Birthdays within the congregation, and those who are friends, family for us. And it's always interesting on a Sunday morning. We'll even go sometime to sharing our in-laws and our outlaws with one another, because it says that God is working and that God is delivering. So we do our birthday shout-outs. This week, I want to send a shout out to Laura Ashley Moore, Deborah Marpins, David Earnhardt, Robert Burton. Celebrated Robert's wife last week. We got him this week. A dear friend from Gordon, Linda Fair, Deborah Varallo, Andrea Blackman, a young friend of mine, Becky Brooks, Lolita Slay, and got some doctors here, but Dr. Tamika Winston, Dr. Brad Wright, and Dr. Kenitha Wilson, and Senator Jeff Yarborough, Jimmy Wade, Travis Pentecost, Delvin Donaldson, Evan Bunch, and last but not least, because we are the same age, I want to send birthday shout-outs to Tom Ward. This week, as we're celebrating birthdays, and one of the things we also lift up are those that will be remembering loved ones the first time after they have gone and gotten their rewards. And so this week we are praying for Hank Harris as he remembers his mother, Hazel. Her birthday is this week, and so we're sending special prayers out for them. We continue to lift up and to be in prayer for the violence that is taking place in our community, and for this week was listening and a woman who was delivering some food had her 4-month-old baby in the car, and her car was hijacked. They did find, eventually found the car a couple of hours later, and the baby was fine. But just the violence that is just taking place within our community is on the rise, and particularly the kind of rage that is around that. We're praying for those around the world that are dealing with it, in particular a lot of our thoughts and prayers around what is happening in Ukraine, and so we lift that up. We continue to pray as we are seeing various states are beginning to lift the restrictions about wearing masks in public places, because more people are being vaccinated, and the numbers are on the decrease, but yet there's still roughly 1,000 people a day are still dying from COVID. So we want to continue to encourage people to go and to get not only the vaccine but their boosters, and to continue to take safety measures. While they may not be mandated, it still does not stop one from taking the precautions one needs for that. We just want to pray. Next week is Valentine's Day, and so we are praying for all of those who will be celebrating, and for those of whom it will be a difficult time, we're lifting them up also. If you have prayers that you want us to share with one another, and want me to be in prayer with, I ask that you please get in contact with me. You can do that via Facebook, or to send me a text message, give me a call, because I do believe that it's an important part of the ministry that we have here. Continue to pray for those of whom have experienced recent loss within their families. Continue to lift them up in your prayers. Continue to be in prayer for those who are just dealing with some stressful situations in their lives, and believing that when we are offering up, that we're also offering ourselves up to be used by God, to be an instrument of God's grace in this time. Amen. Our reading for this week, which will be the 6th Sunday after Epiphany, is from Luke's Gospel, the 6th chapter, and I'll be reading for you verses 17 through 26, and I'll be using the Common English Bible translation. Jesus came down from the mountain with them and stood on a large area of level ground. A great company of his disciples and a huge crowd of people from all around Judea and Jerusalem and the area around Tyre and Sidon joined him there. They came to hear him and to be healed from their diseases, and those bothered by unclean spirits were healed. The whole crowd wanted to touch him because power was going out from him, and he was healing everyone. Jesus raised his eyes to his disciples and said, "Happy are you who are poor, because God's kingdom is yours. Happy are you who are hungry now, because you will be satisfied. Happy are you who weep now, because you will laugh. Happy are you when people hate you, reject you, insult you, and condemn your name as evil because of the human one. Rejoice when that happens. Leap for joy because you have a great reward in heaven. The ancestors did the same things to the prophets. But how terrible for you who are rich, because you've already received your comfort. How terrible for you who have plenty now, because you will be hungry. How terrible for you who laugh now, because you will mourn and weep. How terrible for you when all speak well of you, and then the ancestors did the same thing to the false prophets. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. One of the real blessings for me this year, for this season of Epiphany, was the challenge I issued to myself to in the reading and preparing for the messages for this season, was to look and read Luke and only look at Luke. And not to look at the stories that were being shared and comparing them to other stories and other encounters, such as the calling of the disciples and the beginning of all of that. But to rest with Luke and to read it from a perspective as it was the only one that I may have had access to, looking at it solely from that perspective. As I say, I've been blessed by that because I have looked at the stories in new and different ways, and it has helped to keep the stories alive. I must admit, though, that occasionally I do do some comparison as I listen to the stories, just to see and try to understand. One of the things that we do in this conversation with Trey is just to give a slightly different context, but to try to still keep it within the context of where Luke is speaking to, and to whom the Gospel of Luke was written for. And this week we have the parts of where we call the Beatitudes, the blessings that we have. Now, I have to admit that most of us are probably more familiar with the Beatitudes that are in Matthew's Gospel, that are part of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, and there are more of them than are in Luke, and they're more familiar because they are worked out a little bit more in the conversation. In looking at that, I am and challenge you not to think that the only two times that maybe Jesus ever talked about the Beatitudes as we know them were in those two, and not for us to think that maybe somehow that Luke in his writing, since it comes after Matthew, just writes and does some editing in it. I like to think that as Jesus preached around for the 3 years that he was preaching, and even probably before, when he was doing his own teaching, before his popularity got out, that these were things and that he had said on many occasions. It is, it's hard for me to think that that he only shared this on two occasions, and we're lucky enough only to hear the two times that they were shared. I think of this in terms of Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream." A lot of us, a lot of people think, okay, well, Dr. King only made that speech once, which was on the March on Washington. But there are others who had heard him and made the reference. In fact, the story story goes, that Mahalia Jackson had, in fact, heard him talk about the dream before, and as they were going, and she was standing on the stage behind him, and as he was talking in Washington, encouraged him, knowing that it was going to probably fire the crowd up. She kept telling him, "Martin, tell him about the dream. Tell him about the dream." And I am sure, he probably kept hearing it and got into it, and because of that, we have this great message by him. But it was not the only time that he shared with that. And so I think as he's talking about the blessings and the blessings that he's outlined in this, that he used them and adapted them to the situations that he was in and as it pertains to the crowd. Now, I say, most of us are more familiar with Matthew and on the Sermon on the Mount, and Luke lets us know that he has come down from the mountain, that he's been up on the mountain with his disciples, and he has come down, and as when they get down, it says that they're on level ground, they're on the plain. In fact, there are people who say that this is the Sermon on the Plain as opposed to the Sermon on the Mount. But he sees the crowd, and as he is looking at the crowd, he recognizes that that in that crowd there are a lot of people who have come to him, and they are seeking healing. That there are those that not only are seeking healing from diseases, there are those of whom have unclean spirits, or we may say, have mental illnesses, or are struggling with things within their spirits, and they are coming to be healed too. And while there are those of whom are being healed from his word, there are others of just who want to come and just touch him. And so because even in the touch and being touched by him, there was power that came through and for the healing. And so while he is looking at this crowd and he is in there and he is healing people, he stops and he says to the disciples in a conversation, he begins to talk, and he outlines for them four blessings. Now, in some translation, it says blessed. The translation that I read for us today, it says happy are those, or blessed are those. He says that blessed are those who are poor, and blessed are those who are hungry, and those who weep, and those of whom have been condemned, whom they have defamed and slandered you because of your association with the human one, or in some translations with the Son of Man. And he says within each of those that they are blessed, and then says to them that because in your blessing, for the poor, he says, the kingdom is yours. For those who are hungry, they will be satisfied. For those who weep, they will laugh. And for those of whom have been defamed, their reward is coming. We listen to that, and there are some of whom kind of struggle with that, and will go back, and in particular, I like to go back to Matthew's, because when he says that, he says, blessed are those who are poor in spirit. But in this particular case, he just says poor. He doesn't say poor in spirit, and I believe he is talking about those who are in fact just poor. They may have been financially poor, they may have been poor in the spirit, but they find themselves in the midst of poverty. I think this is important, and I think it was important for Jesus in outlining that and saying it to the disciples, is that I want you to see these people, and I want you to see the conditions that exist, and I want you to understand how God sees them. that as he is talking, and in particular then when he goes on later and he gives the kind of woes, this was a time where people kind of felt like, well, if you're going through something, that if you are dealing with something, it is because you have not found favor in God. That if you were sick, then it was because God, you did something, and so you were justified in being sick. We will know the stories later of when the man that was born blind. They want to know, okay, who sinned? Was it the man? Did he sin in the womb? Did his parents? But surely there was a sin that caused that. And so they were looking, and they were looking at these at the people who were coming, and probably there was something in them that said that these people who are going through this are going through this because this is God's will on them, because they have not conformed in the ways of which God wanted them to conform, and Jesus wanted them to look at them and to look at them in different light. And I honestly believe that he was encouraged them to look at the conditions and looking at the situations that put them in, and that oftentimes the reason that they were in conditions were not based upon something that they did, but something that had been done to them. That put them in that situations, that people who are poor oftentimes are poor not because they may be lazy or they may not want to work, but they might find themselves in situations where they are taking advantage of. Certainly we have been listening to a lot of that, of talking about the working poor within our communities, and the fact that there are many people who are working long and hard, but yet still are not able to afford a standard of living, and so we advocate for the living wage, and so what Jesus is saying in this moment is that he wanted them to understand that what he is coming and what he is talking about is a reversal of God looking at them in a different light, and for them to understand that the God who is their God is a God who will ultimately deliver them from the situations that they're in, that God has greater power over the forces of the status quo that keep certain people in certain situations. And then, as he's doing that, and as they're listening, I don't know if that's what you're really saying, but okay, that's great. And for any of us who have been in those situations, those are in fact liberating, and these are words of hope. But then he turns around, and then not only after he does the blessing, but then he says, "Woe!" In the ones, in the translation today, it says how terrible it is. The New Revised says, "Woe to those for the people who are rich, and woe to those who have plenty now." And who are not hungry, and woe is those who are laughing now, and woe is those of whom everybody speaks well about. Because he's saying into that is that I want you to, that you're looking at this, and in our sense that we like to think, okay, well, if I've got plenty, and if things are going well in my life, that must mean I am blessed and highly favored by God, and God is shining on me. And we'll look at that, and almost to the point that, our actions are being justified by God. But what Jesus in turn says to them, wait a minute, for those of you of whom have received these things, for those whom are rich, well, guess what? didn't come for you. This is not about you. You've already gotten your comfort. You've gotten what you have. And for those of whom he says, you got plenty now, a time will come when you will be hungry. And for those of whom you're laughing now, a time will come when you will mourn and weaken. There will be that kind of reversal for them. And so, you're kind of saying, oh, well, God wants these kind of things. And I think what he was challenging them, and I think what he particularly challenges us now, is that normally when we find ourselves in situations where we're dealing with our affluence and we're dealing with our comforts and we've got more than enough, is that we fail to see how we participate in the systems and structures that cause others to have to go without, and cause others to live in situations where they seem to be without any hope. That when we find ourselves so preoccupied with our luxury and with our doing things, that we fail to notice that those who are around us, who are going through some difficult and situations. I'm thinking in a contemporary terms of those of whom are going around and saying, I don't have to have masks, I don't have to do all of this, because I've got this and I can afford this and I can do that. But not taking into consideration, and oftentimes wanting people to put their lives at risk to be able to serve them and to do and provide for them, and not being aware of how their decisions, how they influence others. That Jesus in that moment, as he's looking at the crowd and as the disciples are looking, and as they're joining in this new ministry and dealing with what's happening in the world and how it is that we work toward bringing the kingdom on heaven to earth, that he is saying to them and he's saying to us is that that we're coming for those of whom stand in need and those of whom are turning to God as believing that God is the answer for them, that God is indeed looking and seeing and God is aware of them, and that we must be aware that when we get to the places where we don't think that we need God, or we're getting to the place of where we think that God, because God is providing for us, that God is on our side. It kind of reminds me of of so many of whom are in powers and positions of power are saying, and God is on our side, because we wouldn't have all of this if God wasn't blessing us in the thing, and not realizing that they have gotten it by deceit and gotten it that the day is coming, and that where that will all be made right. Now, I know you're saying, well, this was 2,000 years ago and it hasn't happened. But I think we have to hear this word, and we have to hear it as Jesus encouraged those on that day to hear it. And that is to say that if we're going to be those of whom are going to follow Jesus, if we are going to hear the message of Jesus and then live it out in our lives, then we have to be people of whom look at those who are going through and see them as God sees them, and to be about the work of bringing about healing and restoration and wholeness in their lives, and that we are supposed to use that of which God has made available to us, that we are to use that and to share it with those of whom we are in community with, whom stand in need, because ultimately what is it about is making sure that all of us are provided for, that all of us are cared for and loving in one another. It says it in this message that it was on the level ground, and I just think that served as a backdrop to let us all know that for God, that God wants us to see one another, and for us to see those in need, and for us to respond to the need, and for us to realize that God's love for us, and God's care and God's coming in the form of the one that we call Jesus the Christ, is so that we might all be on that level playing field, that we might be in heaven. Do you realize that that if we that the heaven that we look at and that we think about is that there's only one that's above all other ones, that all the rest of us are on level ground. And I think that's the challenge for us in this message, and those are the things I'm going to try to work with on this Sunday. How things going with you?
Going pretty good, man. How things going with you?
Going pretty good. Picked up Mason from school today, and he had been walking around. Since he couldn't carry Blue in, he found a carrot, and the teacher said, "Well, you've been carrying this carrot around all day." And so I told him, I said, "Well, you got to leave the carrot here because, Blue going to be jealous because Blue waiting for you." And so he got a little upset with that. So he didn't necessarily want to go, he wanted to stay there. And so he sat down. So, but he got cool after we got outside and, gave him Blue. He didn't want to get in at first, but then I said, "Look, well, you just want me to put Blue up here," and he got Blue, and so he kind of chilled out. So, but other than that, it was a good day, and we went in the store and went kind of around since it was nice out, and then when his mother came in, she took him back out. So he had a good day. Didn't take a nap, but he had a good day.
Okay then. So you went and got your haircut yesterday, huh?
Well, I had a challenge. I didn't get the person of whom I was supposed to get the haircut from was ill, and so I had gone by, and so it was another person in the shop, and so he did it, and he kind of got it lined up and stuff. He didn't cut quite as much off of it as I wanted to. So
well, how you get it out of the chair, and your haircut is not how you want it to be? I don't understand that whole concept. Like, oh, I gotta leave the barbershop and cut my own hair. It's like, no, bro, no.
Well. I mean, part of it was one. I mean, it was not somebody, with me and barbers, I want to go in. I don't want to tell you how to cut. I'm not a barber, so I don't know how to cut. And so I thought I explained to him what I want, and I, went through. I didn't know him. It was late. I was uncomfortable. Just there, and so I was just ready to kind of go.
Okay.
And so the part I can't do, he did that, and kind of did all right. The other thing too is you don't have my glasses on. Didn't have the mirror. So the time I got to see in a mirror was when it was all over with. He had took all the covering off and everything, said how it is, and then I didn't know how much it was, and then I asked him, and then it was a hell of a lot less than, and so then I was like, well, maybe I didn't really explain to him what I really wanted, and I said, so I'll get with the guy who is supposed to do it, and because part of it, I was like, okay, well, he was doing it for somebody else. He wasn't really doing it because I was his thing, So anyway, that's what it was.
Yeah. So I noticed that your hair had changed. I won't even say that it got cut because it looked like part of it was longer than the rest of it.
Well,
so anytime you want me to schedule an appointment for you for a barber that take better care of you, just let me know. I'll handle that.
No, I have. I can. We have the one that. Two that I can use, and when I go on the app, and most of the time, that He has available are not at the times that I can, at the times that I can go. He'll say, well, I got Sunday at 10:30.
Right,
Okay,
right.
Or I'm a little risky on a Wednesday. If I could get in if I knew I could get in at 10 o'clock and out by 11, then I would probably do that. But and then as I say, a few weeks ago, dealing with COVID and all the other kind of stuff. So it has not been a priority. And then part of it on this particular case, it came as a recommendation, and, from somebody else, and going in, and then I'd seen some of the people that had been cut. Even your sister went to the guy that was supposed to cut it, and he did a real good job in cutting her hair. So when you just got somebody that you just like, just walk in, so yeah, I will. I'll probably go back in and look at one of the old ones.
Yeah.
I wish I could get somebody that was on Mondays. So
On Mondays. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure somebody would do it for the right price.
Well, see, see that. I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so so if you get a bargain, you what they say, you get what you pay for. Get what you pay for.
Yeah. Bless your heart.
Bless your heart. So.
I'm gonna get you a hat.
Yeah. Well, and that was the other thing. I had a stocking cap on, and so the stocking cap kind of pushed half of it down, and then I was pulling on it on another, and Mason was pulling on it by the time you saw it. So we Mason loves to particularly pull on the beard and get my attention when I don't do the right thing. So I want to thank you for tuning in today and listening to my conversation on the haircut. That probably, I'm sure you're saying, what context does that have to do with the message? For those who occasionally will tune in, especially if you were tuning in for the last couple of weeks, that has been a major discussion on Sundays about when it is that I was going to get a haircut, and in some ways it does. We talk about, how we see things and how we see people and how we evaluate what's going on in the world. And I think it's good for us to stop and to be reminded from time to time that when Jesus was looking at situations and when Jesus was looking at people, he was looking at people from the point of where they were and who they were inside. He was looking at their needs. He didn't get caught up in their appearance or their address or whether they were coming and strolling in their fancy digs or coming in on their expensive camels or whatever, but looking at us. And I hope and I pray that while we can make fun of how the pastor looks, but that we are truly sensitive to the people who are around us and what people may be going through. There's a difference between somebody just being lazy and trifling, like I have been, and that those of whom are in our midst that are truly struggling, of whom I believe God is calling us to reach out and to see how we might help. So thank you for tuning in and spending some time.